Hey guys, what's going on? It's Rays here, bringing you another Super Mario Sunshine tutorial. In this video, I'm going to be explaining how to do the cutscene skip strat using tooth damage for Noki 4, aka the eel. This is a shine that I see a lot of people struggle with, and the tutorials that are out there are quite a bit outdated, so I figured it would be beneficial that I make a more up-to-date one that people will be able to use as reference. In this video, I'm going to be doing three things. I'm going to be explaining how to do the cutscene skip and the eel and his general behavior. And then I will also be showing you how to do a pretty good backup. So on the off chance that you get eaten while you're performing the initial strat, this is a good way to minimize time loss. Finally, at the very end of the video, I will be attaching an eel with no commentary, no microphone. That way, if you generally learn better by having a resource and by watching rather than by listening, you'll be able to use that to kind of make sure that you're doing things correctly and maybe find out what you're doing wrong. Anyways, let's get into it. So, the very first thing you want to do in the eel is you want to make sure you get hit by a bubble on the way down. This is important because if you do not do this, you will not have enough air to fight the eel without having to get a coin, which is slow and we don't want to do that, of course. So what I generally do is I get the second bubble coming out of his eye, so there's the first, we're going to be getting the second one down there. And it's important that you don't hover here, because if you hover over a bubble, it messes with the hitbox. So just swim into it, Mario will take damage, but if you keep holding up, he'll get healed regardless. And now we can set up for the initial fight to the eel. So whenever you're doing the eel, a lot of people just tend to hover whenever they think is right, but there's actually a decent amount of timing involved here. But it's not too strict, it's pretty lenient. However, if you don't know that it exists, it's possible to mess up. So what we're going to be doing is after we get hit by our air bubble, we're going to continue falling until we hear the eel begin to cry. And when he cries, that's when we want to start the hover. Not when he's coming up from the ground, but right before he comes up from the ground, when he cries. And the reason that we do this is because if you do it and time it correctly and you're in the right spot, then whenever the eel opens his mouth, you'll be high enough to where you'll be able to clean off all four teeth on the inside and one on the outside, which is what we call the Yahtzee. But you'll also clean off some of the middle teeth along the way. And you'll see what I'm talking about with that in a second. So let's go ahead and do that. So he's spinning. He cries, now we do our hover right over the mouth. And you can see that by doing this and hovering at this time, you're high enough that when he opens his mouth, you actually halfway clean off some of the teeth. And sometimes you can clean off a bit of 2 or 3 teeth. Sometimes you can entirely clean off 1 tooth. It really kind of depends on your positioning. But don't beat yourself up over it if you don't get that. You should still have enough time regardless. But with some practice and positioning work, you can generally get quite a bit cleaned off. So now we actually begin the fight. And this is kind of hard to explain while I'm doing it, so I'm going to give you an in-depth explanation right now, and then when I'm actually performing it, I will kind of say a few things, but I won't say too much, so you can kind of watch and see how it works for yourself. But the very first thing we want to do is, after the eel opens his mouth, we want to immediately clean off all 4 inside teeth. And the order you do this in doesn't matter, but just try to be relatively quick about it, because if possible, after you clean off all 4, you want to go for the 5th coin. Not the 5th coin, the fifth tooth. Now, this is not required, and you can still get a good eel even if you don't get the Yahtzee, but for the most optimal eel, it's good if you can clean off the fifth tooth. And after I do that, then I will begin doing the normal pattern for the eel, which I'll explain right now as well, because it's kind of hard to explain while I'm doing it. But essentially, the way this is going to work is we'll do our Yahtzee attempt, whether we get 4 or 5, that's irrelevant. Hopefully we'll get 5. But after we do that, the eel will begin to spin. And that's how you know you can't clean his tooth off anymore, because when he's moving, it's impossible to clean off a tooth. It just is. Like, it becomes like, I don't know, I guess the plaque, like, is stuck to his teeth, and it's like, ah! So you can't do it then. But, fortunately, the second you trigger him to try to eat you by going low in his mouth, the teeth become vulnerable again. So the general pattern for how the eel works is we want to get our initial 4 or 5 teeth cleaned, and then once he starts spinning, we want to go down low enough in his mouth to where he'll make a noise and start to close his mouth. And when he does that, you know you're low enough, and you want to immediately hover out of his mouth. And just the general pattern for how this will work is we'll do our initial stuff, we'll wait for him to start spinning, and then when he does so, we'll go low in his mouth, and when he tries to eat you, you want to swim out of one side and immediately turn around and switch to your spray nozzle and start spraying off one of the teeth on the outside. And after you clean off that tooth, you want to go straight back into his mouth to try to get him to eat you again, and then you want to clean off that tooth or then you want to clean off another tooth, and that's just how it works, you know. You get him to try to eat you. When he opens his mouth again, you spray one off, and then go back in his mouth. Get him to try to eat you. Go out the side, and then spray off a tooth on the outside. And you'll kind of see what this looks like here in a second. But by doing this, it doesn't have a reliance on what order you clean off the golden tooth in or anything like that, and it makes it much, much easier for you to get the eel done quickly. I see very, very often a lot of people who don't understand the eel trying to clean off 2 teeth per cycle after the initial first one, and you can't do that. If you do that, he'll go under the ground. And it's important, and it might seem slower, but it's important that you just clean off 1 tooth and get back in the mouth. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're doing our initial cleaning here. We got our 5 teeth. We'll go for one on the outside here. We get it. Okay, start spinning, get him to try to eat you. Do a Y turn. Clean off a tooth. And then get him to try to eat you. And then Y turn. Then clean off a tooth. And here is when we do our cutscene skip. Now this is really tricky. It's super, super tricky because if you don't know the hitbox and you don't know the timing, it's kind of hard. So this will probably take you a bit of practice, but with a bit of time, it's not too hard. So what I'm going to do here is something a little different than I've done on the first 7 teeth. What I will do will look like I'm doing the same thing, but it will turn different really quickly. So after we clean off our 7th tooth, we want to immediately go back into his mouth and try to get him to eat us again. But then we want to go back out, but not too far away from the tooth. We actually want to go on his lip. His lip is not a part of the hitbox that will consider you being eaten, so it's okay to be on his lip without getting eaten. And the reason that we want to be on his lip is because the lip is obviously, you know, if you know how mouths work, it's right next to the tooth. So that way when he opens up his mouth again after he tries to eat you, you can hover straight into his tooth, and you're actually going to go inside of it. And the way that the cutscene skip will work is you go on his lip when he tries to eat you, and then when he begins to open his mouth, you'll hover into the tooth, and Mario will go entirely inside of it because it's transparent. And if you go inside of it, you can kind of submit the fact that you'll get it. And then you want to start spraying. And about halfway through cleaning off his tooth while inside of it, the tooth will hit Mario, and it'll knock you back. And that's okay, that's supposed to happen. Because when that happens, Mario will start flashing with invincibility frames, and you'll then be able to finish cleaning off his tooth and get the skip. Now, this is going to be kind of hard to do since I'm paused, so I might mess it up the first time, but you get the general idea. So, here it is. So we want to try to get him to eat us. Here it is. We'll hover into the lip. We're inside of the tooth. It's gonna hit us, and now we can get the skip. Now, since I actually was a little slow there, since I was coming out of a pause, I did what is a bit of a slower of a 1 cycle, but still very much a 1 cycle, which is if you try to do your turn and you're too slow, he'll actually start spinning, but that's okay. What you want to do if that happens is continue to just swim alongside his mouth until he stops moving, and then you can go onto the lip and perform the cutscene skip like normal. But because I was a little slow on that, I actually took slightly more damage than I wanted, which means that even though I got the cutscene skip, because I don't have 3 bars of life, I will die if I don't get a coin. Fortunately, there's enough time where if that does happen to you, you can go quickly get a coin and not lose any time, but just something to keep in mind. The second you hit his tooth and finish cleaning off the last one, you need to have at least 3 life. But as you can see here, we only have 2. So we'll go over here and get some. We only really need to get 1. And then we will get the shine. Now, a good indicator of knowing where the shine is, and you can kind of figure it out after you do it, some yourself. But generally, there's a small piece right here, whereas these other pieces are kind of bigger. And if you go to the right side of this small piece, the shine will always be kind of where there's a cross in the ground, and it'll be on the lower right-hand side. And the shine will always go to the same place every time. But there you go. That's how you do the cutscene skip using tooth damage. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut the video here, but I'll immediately attach the backup strat. So stay tuned for that. Hey guys, it's Rays here, back bringing you the backup strat now for the eel. And this is a strat that you want to go for if you accidentally get eaten while you're trying to get the fish to eat you, like if you trigger it too early and you can't get out of his mouth or whatever. But doing this method, you can minimize time loss and you can immediately go back to doing the other method, which will kind of put you back on track. So it starts the same, and a lot of the stuff is the same here, so I won't explain this too much. But, we start with our free fall. And for the purpose of this video, I'll go ahead and just do the Yahtzee and then get eaten after I clean off, I guess, the 6th tooth. No, actually, we'll get eaten on the Yahtzee. Let's say we tried to go over the Yahtzee, but it didn't work. We couldn't quite get that 5th tooth. Or we could. Let's try to get the 5th tooth and then get eaten. I mean, really, like, the possibilities of this happening are endless, but it works the same way in each situation, so. Alright, he's crying. We begin our upward hover. Alright. So let's just assume, we're doing our cleaning here on the teeth. But, we can't make it, oh no, we get eaten. Well, what's going to happen is the eel's going to spit you upward and he's going to immediately go under the ground. And what you want to do here is kind of similar to the initial strat when you're falling. You just kind of want to hover until he begins to go upward. And here's something that a lot of people don't understand about the eel. This is probably the most, misinterpreted thing about the eel after you get eaten, because I see people do it in runs all the time. It's that if you clean off a tooth after he eats you, he will go back under the ground. He'll go back into his little hole and you won't be able to continue to clean off tooth. However, if you wait long enough, he'll start spinning, which will then allow you to go back to the spinning cycle that we talked about in the first part of the video. So what you actually want to do is when he opens up his mouth again, you want to half spray as many teeth as possible, but don't clean off any of them entirely. So he opens up his mouth, let's do a half clean here, a half clean here, a half clean here, a half clean here, and now we just kind of wait, because after a second he'll start spinning. And when he starts spinning, you can continue the strat like normal. So, we can go over here, and, then we can get him to try to eat us, and then we can clean off the tooth here. And then, we can do this. And we can clean off the tooth here. And now we can go into first person strat on the lip, swim into the tooth, and then wait for it to eat us, and there you go. And I'm actually gonna die because I didn't get any coins when he ate me. And that's something you can do, that I actually would recommend you do whenever he eats you. That way you won't die there like I did. But, it generally explains a way to do the backup strat. So, yeah, hopefully that helps. And another good example of what you just saw in that backup strat is that you don't have to be on the golden tooth to get the cutscene skip. You can get it on both a white tooth and a golden one. So now I'm going to attach on a run of just a perfect eel. I'm going to turn the mic off and you guys can just watch it, and hopefully you can use it as a good resource. Anyways, hopefully this helps. Good luck, guys. See you later.